Welcome Nightfarers to the Ningen Plays channel, where we will be breaking down all 8 of the playable characters in Elden Ring Nightreign in these individual guide videos to help you decide which of them is right for you to jump in and face the challenges of the night. Today we are going to be talking about Recluse, the mysterious witch mage character whose abilities can be tricky to master but offer up a lot of potential. The Recluse is a typical caster type character in the sense that her health and physical abilities are much lower than that of other Nightfarers, but her powerful magical attacks allow her to deal a lot of damage, whilst more often than not keeping a distance between her and the enemy. Of course, there are spells that vary in their range, but a lot of the time you are going to be doing damage from afar. As a mage, she relies heavily on her pool of FP needed to cast her spells, and that's where her passive comes in. It is called Elemental Defense. Collect elemental residues to replenish FP. The Recluse is able to absorb energy from damaged enemies in order to keep her reserves of mana up and allow her to continue using her magical arsenal. This is obviously very important as it is her main ability. Using these spells, you need FP to cast them, so this is very, very important. Her main ability is the Magic Cocktail. Combine elemental residues into different powerful spells. This ability can seem like a lot to grasp at first, and definitely made the Recluse the trickiest character to get to grips with back during the network test. The energy that you extract from enemies with her passive have certain elements attached to them, and once you have collected 3 of these, you can use the Magical Cocktail to use a spell. The spell you get is based on the combination of elements that you have collected. You can see here from the list that I'll put up on the screen from the wiki, there are a fair few of these combinations, and learning these as well as how best to collect them from specific enemies and when is best to use them will be a big part of playing the Recluse to her full potential. This complexity, combined with the lack of HP and defensive stats compared to the other characters as we mentioned earlier, definitely makes her a higher tier character in terms of difficulty, and is not one necessarily recommended for your first attempts at the game. Obviously, if you've played as a mage character in other Soulsborne games, you kind of know the drill when it comes to that department. With Nightreign being a much faster paced game, and with your stats being so low, especially in the early levels, it's definitely a character that is going to be difficult to get to grips with right at the very start. Now, her ultimate ability is the Soul Blood Song. Affixes blood sigils to enemies that restore health and magic of Nightfarers who attack them. Now, this ability could be absolutely fantastic to support your team during a tough encounter or boss fight. All enemies within the specified range receive a mark, and damaging those enemies restores both HP and FP for all players on the team. This can turn the tide of a losing battle, allowing you to replenish health quickly, or even just provide the HP regen needed for the melee class units to go full speed ahead into close quarters combat, knowing the hits they will take can be healed almost immediately. This of course also allows the Recluse to fire off her spells at the marked enemies, all while receiving FP back by damaging them. Certainly a strong ability. Obviously this can be combined with the other characters. Being able to heal by dealing damage is obviously something that is going to benefit the melee classes tremendously, and the ability to regain FP will allow them to keep using their abilities as well as the Recluse to keep using her magic. So definitely a very powerful ultimate. The one thing that you do have to bear in mind is that the ultimate does have a fairly long casting animation. It does have some iframes, but obviously it's not the kind of thing that you want to try and activate when enemies are pushing right up close to you. It does take a while to cast, and of course it does have, as we mentioned, a certain range. It's not a very long range ability, so you can't use this on enemies that are too far away. So you want to make sure you definitely get to grips with what the range of this ability is, so that it doesn't go wasted when you are in these difficult encounters or boss fights. So the other thing to note about the Recluse is that just like I, she has ranged abilities, so these can be used to pick up downed teammates from a distance, which can be an absolute game changer in difficult encounters or boss fights, as you do not have to run up to the enemy that's just downed your teammate in order to try and pick them up. And depending on the spells that you have access to using at the time, will allow you to pick up enemies from or allies from quite far away relatively easily. So she definitely seems like a character that is going to be very tricky to master, and one thing that definitely is going to be interesting is with the randomness of Nightreign, with the roguelike setup of random enemies and things like that, the drawing of elements from enemies to give you the specific spells that you're able to use is something that is very interesting to see how that's going to play out in practice, right? Because if you head through an area and you're taking down enemies and they're giving you certain element charges from extracting from them to give you a specific spell that you will then get to use, and you're coming up to a mini boss, and then the spell you use is not necessarily one that is effective against that boss, whether it be the element or the range or something like that. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out in the actual game. As I said, she is definitely, from the characters we got to play in the network test, and even now, I've already done the guides for I and Raider. Both of them have very good abilities, but they definitely seem a lot more straightforward. She seems like one of the more complex characters to use, and getting the hang of this magical system, extracting these elements and then using the magic cocktail is something that is going to be very, very interesting to get used to and to learn how to master effectively. Obviously, just like with any Soulsborne game, definitely recommended that you at least have one normal melee weapon instead of just the casting staff item, so that you can actually conserve FP against weaker enemies, or if enemies manage to close the distance and get close to you. It's definitely advisable that you have those kind of backup weapons for you in order to keep yourself out of that situation. However, she does have an interesting dodge. You can see it in one of the clips. She has the ability to dodge away a fairly considerable distance, allows you to put a good bit of gap between you and the enemies so that you can continue to use your spells. So overall, the Recluse seems like a very fun character to play. Definitely going to be interesting to get to grips with her and master her abilities, but once you are able to do so, she is going to prove to be a huge asset to the team. Definitely a risk-reward type of character. So let me know what you think of her down below in the comments. That is going to be it for the video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let me know down below who you are going to be playing as when Nightreign releases, and I will see you guys out there. Peace out.